All right, so we have a new episode of Building the Open Web. Today we have Adam Draper. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sasha. This is fantastic. I'm excited.
Maybe we can start with a little bit of a background on what you're up to these days.
Yeah, so my name's Adam Draper. I'm the founder and managing director of Boost VC, which was historically in the crypto space the first fund, but also accelerator to focus on Bitcoin related startups. And then we've evolved to sort of focusing on a sci-fi future, which includes crypto as well as virtual reality, space, oceans. But I would also say that crypto is sort of my it's like my first love. The open web is like sort of this my first love into like industries of sort of idealist, talented builders. So I've been in the crypto space for about how long? 2012, 9 years. So I've been in the space for nine years. That is crazy. Actually, I invested in here. What's the date today? I invested in Coinbase 9 years ago, 3 weeks ago. So, and that was my first foray into crypto. I actually didn't own any coins or tokens because the only coin there was Bitcoin, really, and so that was sort of the only thing there was. So that's crazy to me right now. So, like 3 weeks ago, 9 years ago, I invested in Coinbase.
That's crazy. I've been in this space only for like 2 years, but it feels like a decade. So like for you, it's probably
Yeah. Well, also the last 6 months has felt like 3 decades. So like it's a
maybe we can start from like overall from like your background. Like where did you grow up?
Yeah, sure. So I'll go all the way back. So I was born in 1986, but I was born around where I currently am, which is Menlo Park. I grew up in a place called Atherton. My dad is a venture capitalist. He founded a firm called DFJ. My grandfather is a venture capitalist. He founded a firm called Sutter Hill Ventures, as well as Draper International, as well as Draper Richards Kaplan. And then my great grandfather was a venture capitalist. So it's sort of a thing for my family to just become venture capitalists, evidently. Um, it wasn't necessarily something. I don't think any my sister is also a venture capitalist. My brother's also a venture capitalist. Jesse is a venture capitalist, and Billy's a venture capitalist. And I have another sister who is an amazing designer. And I don't think it's something that any of us were really thinking, hey, I want to be a venture capitalist. It's really like we like helping ambitious people get to where they should be going faster. It's really about accelerating sort of the development of where the world's going. And venture capital happens to be a very good way to steer that ship. Also, you realize I've been investing for about 10 years now, and I've been in crypto for about nine. You realize who you're with makes all the difference to your career. And so I really enjoy in venture, we get to surround ourselves with some of the smartest, most ambitious people. And those people just feed off, they give this energy that just makes you love what you're doing even more. So, yeah. So, I mean, my dad is also famously the person who bought the first block of crypto from the U.S. Marshal, and we've both. I've Boost VC has invested in about for our crypto history, 110 crypto related startups at this point. Um, that list includes things like Etherscan and Aragon and Keep, and Polychain. Like we've been a part of sort of the ecosystem and been able to develop great pieces of it. So it's been really fun.
Nice. And when you went to school in UCLA, were you thinking about going to venture capital, or at the time you were thinking about something completely different?
Nah, no, I want to be a professional tennis player. But I also I was an English major. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I actually defaulted into being an English major. But it turns out it's been helpful. I love writing blog posts. I love sort of communicating, and both of those things. It turns out I had to speak English for. But my senior year, one of my friends approached me and he said, "I'm starting a company." And he was older. He had graduated. His name's Thomas Foley. And I said, "That sounds cool. What is it?" And it was he was starting something called Actually, it was called Exchange at the time with an X, Exchange, and it was a stock market for secondary stock purchases. Essentially, it was a secondary market for private transactions. There's a huge problem in 2008, 2009, where there's a liquidity lockup. Basically, people owned a lot of these securities in the private market, whether you're a venture capitalist or a seed investor, but no one could find liquidity on those. And in 2008, the markets had crashed and no one had money. And so we had come up with this idea to be able to facilitate those transactions. It Over 4 years, I learned a lot about starting a business, hiring, firing, fundraising. I also learned a ton about just fintech in general. We were sort of an early wave of what became this fintech movement. We eventually sold for not much money to a company called Venovate, and I around that time had started to mentor a few startups, and I realized that that was where I was getting all my energy, being able to help people not make the same mistakes I did while I was building my own startup. So eventually, I actually left Expert and launched something I called Boost Funder that was geared towards with my co-founder Brayton Williams, who we're still partners at Boost VC. But we launched Boost Funder, which was the first crowdfunding for equity website. And we just said, we're not going to charge anyone so that I can skate around all these regulatory burdens that everyone else is trying to go through. And what we really realized by doing this was that there is still just a communication problem between early stage startups and early stage investors needed a certain language for a startup to be at in order to invest in them, and also just progress and understanding those things. And so what we did was we created a program in real life, in person, that was geared towards educating startups to help them fundraise and also just build a startup. We've been doing it for 8 years now, and we've invested in 300 startups now. The ecosystem includes a lot in crypto and virtual reality, but I sort of have this firm belief that there are two revolutions being built right now. One is the digital revolution, which has been fast forwarded by COVID, by the pandemic, and then there's another revolution, and that's in order to have that full digital world, we do need scarcity on the internet, which the blockchain and all the crypto companies are really experimenting with how that can help us. And then in the physical world, we're trying to either discover more or explore more. And that is why I've focused a lot of time and effort on space and the ocean. So those are sort of what I would say, like, covers the gambit of what Boost VC is. I would say I feel, in crypto, if you were saying you've been in it for the industry for like 2 years, but every 6 months it feels like there's a new generation. 2 weeks ago, someone said, "I'm just letting it ride. I'm farming my sushi," and I don't know, something. And literally, I didn't understand any part of that sentence. I was literally like, what are these words that are coming out of your mouth? And like, basically, we do in crypto have a problem, which is we're sort of smoking our own fumes in some ways, but it's also an amazing sandbox for rapid prototyping of financial products. And so the reason I got into crypto, let's go there. Let's go to why I got into crypto. First off, I met Brian Armstrong at a coffee shop. I always thank this coffee shop called Red Rock that's in Mountain View. And so basically, I met Brian at this coffee shop in Mountain View, and his one liner on this sheet of paper that I got was it's a digital currency marketplace. Now, I had no idea what a digital currency was, and I had no idea that there were enough to make a marketplace of it. And so I was like, okay. I want to learn more. I think this is interesting. I've never heard of these things. I'm sort of a curious person by nature. So I reach out to Brian. I cold emailed him. I actually found the cold email that I wrote to him. Actually, after they raised their $8 billion round, I emailed him his original pitch deck because it was like, it was like sort of told it was great. Actually, it was pretty good. It was very clear for what the time was, but the volumes were like, we did $10,000 in transactions this month. Like that was volume. That wasn't revenue. That was like full volume of all Bitcoin. And now you look at Coinbase, it's like $1 billion a month or whatever. And he said, what he said was, and it wasn't even, he didn't lead with technology. This is the thing that I think a lot of founders do incorrectly. They lead with tech. They say, we're a crypto blah blah blah. But really, what all technology is to solve human problems, right? And so what the way that Brian presented it to me was very simple. He said it was a statement. He said at some point the world is going to be on one financial network. And so in my head, what that unlocked was, why isn't it? Like, that was the thing. I was like, well, that completely makes sense. Like, I can travel frictionlessly. Well, not right now during the pandemic, but in general, we were able to fly to Guam or fly to, China or wherever. But my money technically doesn't port the same way. Like, the money is controlled by a central authority in each country. And so I started thinking like, wow, there are all these middlemen, and I started just learning more. Now, the real reason that I got into it though was after that conversation, I did diligence and I called about, I don't know, 10 referrals, people who either invested in Coinbase or were crypto people. And every single person I met, now some of them were, weird. And that is one thing that like I think is great. Like, I'm weird, but like but all of them, every single one was the most dynamic person I'd ever met. Like, every time I met someone, it was always like they had this energy. They saw this revolution. They were obsessed with this technology. And I was like, anything that has this many smart people focused on it has to go up from where it is. And like, the price of a Bitcoin at that time was about $10. And now it's higher than that, like 1,000 times higher. That's crazy. I didn't buy, actually. I only invested in Coinbase at that time. I'm one of my biggest regrets was I called Brian after I had sent the money, or he called me and said, "Hey, congratulations, you're a investor in Coinbase." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm an investor in Coinbase. Just wrote this check." And he goes, some of the other investors are helping us by buying some volume of Bitcoin. Would you like to buy some? Because I hadn't bought any tokens yet. I had sort of chosen to believe in Brian, but I was like, whoa, man, I just gave you a bunch of money. Like, I don't know if I need to give you more money right now for this other thing. And that's one of my biggest regrets, not buying Bitcoin at $10. I ended up buying it like 30, but but still, that was like 6 months difference. Although there is an argument to be had that if I had like 3x in 6 months, I might have just sold it all and been like, this was the best investment of my life. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. They always think, if I got in at the beginning. So that was my story of how I got in. It was really about the ecosystem, the community, and also the gateway I got into it was really Brian Armstrong from Coinbase, who I don't think anyone gives nearly enough credit. Even, he gets a lot of credit. He's the CEO of this huge company now. However, he doesn't get nearly enough credit for the beginning when he had to pitch what Bitcoin was along with what his startup was doing on top of Bitcoin. So he was like this he had to educate this whole market. I think he did an incredible job of in Silicon Valley educating the market.
And how would you describe then like the other startups in space at the time? Was there like many startups in space, or Brian was the only one?
Great question. Okay, so I launched Boost VC about 2 weeks after investing in Coinbase. We were a broad accelerator. We were just trying to help any company that we could attract to help. And then in January of 2013, we decided to bet the farm on crypto. We said, we're going to go for it. We believe that this market is bigger than what people perceive it to be. Let's just be the beacon. We wrote a blog post, posted it to Reddit, and we got huge amount of excitement. And it was all positive, which on Reddit at that time was like very rare. It still is rare, but like it was really rare to get anything that was like positive comments. Everyone was just excited that anyone threw their hand up and said like, "Hey, we're gonna look at some crypto stuff," and it was just Bitcoin stuff. And so we ended up accepting, I think, 6 of 13 companies or something, 7 of 14 companies into Tribe, 3 of Boost, 2 of Boost, and some of those companies ended up being like Repio, which is in Argentina, and they're doing a credit scoring token, and then so we were able to sort of take this early lead of being a magnet for crypto talent, and we were able to leverage that into really a great community. Like an accelerator is a great way to build a community of different of talented people, because they were all going through the same stuff, but they weren't going through it together. And so suddenly we got them all to do it together in the same roof, in the same place in Silicon Valley. And suddenly people started to think, whoa, there's more to this. And at that time, let's see here, most things were similar to Coinbase, and you needed a transaction. There were OTC desks, there were payment processors, and there were brokers. And then there were people who were trying to do sort of what you would call there were other tokens. So some people forked and made like Dogecoin, and some like Jackson Palmer helped with that. And then there were things like colored coins that were going to allow us to be able to fundraise on the blockchain. The fascinating thing was I was so focused on Bitcoin. So I was like, we started to hear about Ethereum, right? And I actually went to this is sort of a story of you should always just go places and do things, because I was invited to speak at a conference in North Carolina. I had never been to North Carolina, and I was like, I don't know how many crypto people there could be in North Carolina. And I showed up, and they called it Cryptolina. And I showed up, and there were 500 people at this conference. It was one of the biggest crypto conferences I've ever been to. And I got to meet Vitalik. I got to watch him speak. And I was like, why are we even thinking about another token right now? Like, Bitcoin's not working yet. Like, it's still early. It's still like we're not paying with it. We're not fundraising with it. Like, it's a great store of value, which I still believe. But like, we have things we can improve on. And it turned out that having a competitor, having some other alternative token, was incredibly important for the development of like the ecosystem in general. It was incredibly important for there to be competition, for there to be sort of these debates on what was important: transaction cost, speed of transaction, like all these things were the debates that Ethereum was trying to solve. And so they launched their token sale. They ended up raising, I think, $12 million, $14 million off their token sale. And I know a lot of people who participated, and I was just trying to stay the course and say Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin. Let's stay the course. And at some point, there's an email I looked at where I was sending to my LPs, and I said I had just done a trip to New York, and every meeting I was in, everyone was talking about Ethereum, and it hadn't even I think they had just claimed tokens, but there was a huge ecosystem again and I basically, the title of the email was like, Ethereum's a thing. Like, that was my email to all my LPs. I was like, Ethereum's a thing. You should probably figure out how to buy some. And I mean, I regret not jumping as fast as I could to with the belief that there could be another this quickly. But at the same time, I had this thesis, and I was playing out the thesis, and I was wrong. And I didn't know that we were going to need more than anything. What that battle did between Ethereum and Bitcoin, and it was a battle for a while. I think now they're more collaborative than anything else, but it drove more people to the ecosystem. That was the exciting thing. The exciting thing was driving more people to the ecosystem, and people build technology. And that's the thing. I think if I learned one thing about crypto, is that it really isn't about the technology. It's about inspiring the most dynamic people into building great things. And that is, yes. And that's what crypto has in spades. I mean, it's got so many amazing people. Um, and they're all, and I'd say they're all building different things now. There's so many things to focus on in crypto. There's almost too many things to focus on in crypto. I think we're going through a what works time frame, and then it'll consolidate to a few use cases. It's sort of like actually with Bitcoin, like payments. There were tons of payments, tons of like there are a lot of those things. Same things happening right now. We're going out, hey, storage and like which all these ones are launching right now. We're going to learn what works. It's going to consolidate to fewer applications. And yeah, I mean, similar to the internet, like if you had just invested for 15 years in the internet on the thesis of e-commerce and communication, you would have always done well, right? Like it would like e-commerce and communication. You would have at least had the ability to do well. You would have been able to have the shot at seeing Shopify, Amazon, AOL, Facebook. Like you would have at least seen all this stuff if that was your only thesis. So if you've determined exactly what the new Web 3.0 is going to be good for, like having just that same thesis over a 20-year span, you'll do great, right? So that's my thought process.
And how do you think about what this new space, crypto space, is good at? Is it finance? Is it open web? Is it both? Doesn't have to be one or the other.
So I've been trying to think more deeply recently because I've been after that comment to me where I didn't understand a single word in the sentence where it was like something about sushi and something. I was like I need to get back to the roots. And I've been thinking very deeply because I want to make sure that we're still focused on what the mission of sort of the crypto web is all about, or what we call Web 3 now, what we call the open web, what we call um, and I think if the way that it makes me feel good, the way that I'm sort of thinking about it in my skull is there's Bitcoin and there's Ethereum, and there's Near, and there are a couple others, but Bitcoin and Ethereum have sort of transcended the sandbox. It's almost like they've become useful in some, like they've gotten to the point where it's like, and then there's a lot of other things that it's still TBD, but people are making money, and I think it's interesting that there's a live rapid prototyping of different products happening. We've created this ecosystem of 100,000 people who are willing to test basically anything and be incentivized to do so, and it's only going to grow. And that's so exciting because we're going to find out what's useful and what's not. So my thought process is we don't know. Like we're still early. Like I've been in this 10 years and it's still early. And like I think the best is yet to come. I'm like I said about being wrong about Ethereum. I'm open-minded about what can happen, but what I do know is that you need to attract the smartest, most dynamic people who are really taking risk in a very focused problem set. Like Ethereum picked on Bitcoin for like two things, right? And they were able to build out this incredible ecosystem of all developers, and they built out better developer tools, and that basically, like, they started to control the community. Like you need to pick on like 1 to 2 things that matter, and then figure out how to attract a great passionate community around it. That was the thing that every single one of the crypto like evolutions has had. It's all about community and people, and it's right. And I would say right now there's a little bit of a there's a discrepancy between um, people are almost in sports. There's a term called fair weather fans. There are a lot of fair weather fans right now, and what we need is the difference between fair weather fans and like obsessive long-term fans of technology. And so I think it's good that we're attracting more fair weather fans. It means that more people are coming in, experimenting, trying stuff. But the reason Ethereum gained such notoriety, the reason that Bitcoin gained so much notoriety was there's this small group of people who are loyal to this one thing. You need like we need more loyalty in the crypto space. We need more of that happening for the like developer loyalty as well as. I'm also finding uh, we're about to have a lot of jobs for marketing in crypto. I think that's about to be a thing where there's actually marketing and sales and like all this, but which everyone sort of ignored for a really long time, and now it's like starting to be like how you differentiate your brand is to be clear about it. Um, Sorry, that's a lot of stuff on that, but I'm I'm more excited than ever that it's the vision of what crypto like. I'm in it for exactly what Brian Armstrong said the first time that we ever met, which was at some point the world's going to be on one network, on one financial network. That financial network means open web. It means control of your assets, control of your data, control of like you are in control, not someone else is in control. At least having the option of it. And that is getting closer and closer incrementally. I think day to day, we're looking at prices on Coin Market Cap. We're looking on like, but the actual technology is starting to launch. The real great stuff. Near is coming. I mean, there's Filecoin. Polkadot just launched. There are all these ones that are just like on the cusp of really creating breakthrough things. And a big differentiator is going to be community. And so making sure that you have a non-visitor community is going to be really important going forward. So I think that's it. Non-visitor, not no more fair weather fans. That will differentiate your technology from the next.
Interesting. And when you think about winning like hearts and minds of those diehards, is it about developers, or do you see also increased interest in like do you think like end consumers understand this value of like belongs to me, like this is a new kind of way of doing things?
That I think that education is coming for the end consumer. By the way, I was looking. I've been looking at a lot of websites, crypto websites, and they all have partnership groups where it's like we're partnered with all these crypto companies. When those change to being like banks, that's when we're starting to really like make a global change, right? Like right now, it's still we're in our own communities, we're in our own like, and it's great because it's a collaborative ecosystem. It is like I think it is a little more like sharp elbowy right now, but like it is a collaborative ecosystem in general. Um, but when we start to transcend to partnering with like Bank of America and partnering with Facebook and partnering with like these people who have transcended the consumer mindset, um, that's when we can start to translate the value propositions. I agree. I mean, it's all been about timing, and it turns out educating the end consumer is takes a much longer than I thought. I even thought the pandemic was going to fast forward it, and it still feels early. Like I thought everyone was going to start to be like, "Oh, I want to control my own money." And still people bought gold. Like, "Oh, I want to, I want to control my own data." Like everyone's up in arms about Facebook's privacy stuff, which I I actually am I always think it's funny that like 14 years ago when Facebook started, everyone thought that social media was a joke. And then 14 years later, at scale, there's a tragedy of scale. Everyone's complaining about all this information that they put up there. And it's like, they couldn't have even thought about how successful they were going to become at that point. And like, they're trying to do, I believe they're trying, like Facebook and all these other places are trying to do what's right, but the incentive structures are wrong. And so long term, crypto is going to start to look like a rational solution to all of this stuff. And we're not going to be pitching crypto or Web3 or blockchain. We're going to be pitching, hey, this is a way that on like when if you want to license your data to this company, you can. Like it's not going to be we're using side chains and cross chain and like multi-variable calculus or whatever. It's not going to be a technical feat. It's going to be a, hey, you have a problem, you care about privacy. Actually, we can put you in control of that if you want, and like, but and if you do, you have a choice. You can actually charge these big companies for their data. Um, yeah. So I think we're starting to get to the point where people fathom how it can help financially, even though most of these financial products are replicatable in a different world. But it does. I think of DeFi as sort of. I'm really excited about DWeb. I like DeFi. DeFi is a really great user acquisition tool, I think, for the ecosystem. And I think that it's only going to get more powerful. It's only going to take more power away from banks, only going to take more power away from stockbrokers. All of a sudden, everyone's going to realize that like Wall Street moved to the cloud and it's mostly in Silicon Valley. And that's going to be like a crazy moment. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm just talking. Well, I'm very, I love this space. That's basically what I'm saying is like, we're almost there. It's like, it's going to be an ongoing thing, but it's so important that we become in control. And I think there's a shot at having pre-programmable freedom of speech. Everything I do is really about unlocking like, well, the reason we say sci-fi at Boost VC is like, I want I'm obsessed with known unknowns. We know nothing about the ocean. We know nothing about space. We know nothing about the brain. And we deal with so much like incumbent latent bureaucracy that it slows down innovation to get us to the answers. And so I think crypto is an answer to all of that, to unlocking like all that, put you in charge of everything, makes you move faster. And so that's why I believe I'm so excited. Like, give us a little additional control, a little additional freedom. And like that can be pre-programmed in blockchains. That's exciting. That's the exciting thing.
Yep. And so far, like since you've been working also with like 100+ startups in space, like what were some of the most challenging things for founders to overcome in this new space?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely changed over time. Like at the beginning, it was making anyone believe that Bitcoin was a thing. I mean, I still remember I would be in front of all these VCs. Anyone in the crypto, by the way, like all the funds who have been in the space since the beginning, Blockchain Capital, Pantera Capital, I mean, Andreessen did some stuff, Union Square, the like all those guys. We all saw the world from when no one believed, like zero. It was basically like every venture capitalist I went to, I had to sell my heart out. And I had to say, like, what if there was a different way? I had to figure out what the pitch was for Bitcoin. I wasn't even pitching my what I was doing. I just had to sell Bitcoin the whole time. And then in 2014, 2015, there was this lull where it was like, is that Bitcoin thing still even a thing? And that is the most disheartening sentence to hear 100 times a week. Like that is hard. So at the beginning, all those crypto companies, they know what it was like in the darkest of times. If you've been in this industry for 7 years, you deserve a medal. Like that's basically how I think about it. But over time, like those things evolved because people started making money. People started being a billionaire here and there, like a multimillionaire. Early crypto people got lucky. And that started to create stories that brought more people to the industry. I would say the main problem that crypto entrepreneurs have and normal entrepreneurs have is knowing where the market is rather than where you want it to be. And it's the distance. You need to pull it as an entrepreneur. You always need to be pulling the future towards you, right? But timing is always the tough thing. And so I think the only thing I've learned is that, I mean, being early is great if you're willing to withstand some loss. Like I'm happy that I've been in this industry for a long time because I feel like I've built this amazing network. And if I look at that as a net value add, that's been great. But numbers wise, there's a graveyard of a lot of companies that have like come and left, and founders, and like I mean, we had people 5 years ago burn out on crypto. Like they were so into it, they were so impassioned, then they just were like, hey, I can't handle anymore. Um, I think I think honestly, just knowing where the market is and starting to really try to translate where the value is for that market today is where people have won and lost. So the people who quickly moved to launching an ICO, that really what they did was they were able to raise enough money to last this long to figure out where the consumer is for crypto. Like that's really all they did, and which is great. It means that we're about to have amazing products. The people who and that's where the market was. The market was at this spot where they were willing to invest in ICOs, and then regulation came, and no one knew what the rules were, and like all that stuff happened again, like stopped by sort of this bureaucratic like regulatory fear. Um, Fear is the mind killer. And then the other than that, though, the it's really about making sure you're not just thinking. I don't want people thinking I'm the best crypto company. I want them to think I'm the best company. Like I want them thinking like, hey, I'm using crypto to actually solve this global problem. Um, or not even global. It could be local. I actually think cryptos can be good for hyper local stuff also, like just like creating a market of like right now someone could go and save like all the retail stores and just create like a micro fund that like finances a town's stores, and you figure out how to generate revenue off of it. um Crypto incentivizes communities like nothing has ever been done before. I'm What were some other issues? It's all about translating to the end consumer and figuring out what that next wave is and who it targets. That's been everything. Building out distribution, people who figured out how to build distribution to the end goal, they figured out how to last. And really, once you've lasted long enough, you start to achieve value. Coinbase is here because they have 35 million accounts. That's distribution. Like people want to work with you once you've hit a certain number. Um, I think that the next Coinbase, the next, and it's probably already started. I don't know. Um, the next in that era, and Binance is a really interesting thing too. They built out. They knew that they needed liquidity. They built out liquidity, so all of a sudden they were able to establish distribution. Like those were the things that a lot of people didn't. That people undervalue distribution and overvalue product, and that was sort of what happened. But both are important. I'm not crapping on either. But distribution is one of the things that I think startups in crypto don't think enough about. We have a lot of field of dreams scenarios where people are saying, if I build it, they will come. And like, I hate to be the bearer of horrible news, but it turns out you do need a customer. You need to understand who that customer is. Is it a developer? Is it developers who are going to use your protocol, your tool, your whatever? Is it a consumer who's going to use your developer, the protocol, the tool? Is it companies that are going to build on the tool? Like, how do you incentivize those people? What's the ideal person? We we focus, like a lot of our conversations are about how do you attract the best talent? How do you build out more distribution? Like I would say that's most of our conversations with crypto companies.
Got it. And how do they, in your experience, how do you fight for the best talent? How do you attract the best talent?
That is an interesting question. I think early on, a lot of people sort of used the translation of it was a good use case, raising venture capital, because at the beginning, by raising from someone who was a good translator of success. So like, we don't necessarily believe in crypto, but we do trust this venture firm who's been around for 60 years. Like that ends up being a good translator for talent to be funneled in, and it builds a little bit of trust. And so some people use venture capital as a way in which to achieve that like sort of gold standard. money, it turns out, if you can pay well, it turns out you can get good talent. And then and then it's really just selling and building your brand and making sure that you know what the sale against the market is. You need to be known for something. Like, you need someone to be able to say, like, you're different because of X and you're different because of Y. Like, Ethereum was a very clear difference, and they targeted developers. I, I like Vitalik doesn't get enough credit. I think early people, even though they've become successful and like in financially, and people look at them as they don't get nearly enough credit for like taking the shot against a market. And you know, it was funny. I was sort of I was on the side of the problem for Vitalik, which was, you know, we were all like all these Bitcoin people, and still, you know, like I'd still say like we're going to have Bitcoin, but we're going to have others. Like, there's going to be a lot of different networks. Um, the but like there's the bit. It's funny that it was so rational for me to think Bitcoin could like completely uproot the traditional financial system, and then not believe that Ethereum could uproot like Bitcoin. Like that like that blows my mind that was my previous thought process, where it wouldn't, like, no, there's no way, because, and it's like, well, of course, like, there could always be a better, you know, way to do it. But now there are incumbent networks of Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin works the way it was designed. It works, and everyone's always going to use Bitcoin. Bitcoin's going to be a thing. But, you know, you might want faster transactions. You might want, you know, there are going to be use cases for other things. And so you know, I bet there's going to be a blockchain that's really good for data. And like, I don't know if Bitcoin's really great for data. Um, and so I think we're still too soon to tell. At the end of the day, the reason Amazon won, the reason Facebook won, the reason that all these people won in the internet era, Google won, was because they understood their customer. They delivered a service that made the customer's life better. And right now, I think that there's a lot of floated value, um, but it's, and it, you know, it could stay where it is. It could go up from here. Like, I see infinite upside. Like, I think things are undervalued at the end of the day. Um, but I also think that the value to the end consumer is being uh, completely undervalued. Like, I mean, the value to the end consumer is not being achieved by this crypto industry today. And so we need to bridge the gap to like South America, to these geographies on the planet. So I think the next phase is going to be what so we went from like the Bitcoin to cryptocurrencies to blockchain, well, to ICOs to DeFi, to, I think the next phase is going to be DWeb and open web. And that's going to be the next wave of sort of value being provided to this market. And the winners there are going to be enormous. I think the winners are going to be the biggest companies. I think in the next 10 years, if you do this, if you check the market cap of the top 10 companies, what the top 10 companies are every 10 years for the last like 70 years, it goes from automobiles to oil to data, um, to banking to data to sort of data banking. Um, and then I believe that the next 10 years, in 10 years, that isn't even that much longer. I think that it's going to be D-Web and video games. So those are the two. In the next 10 years, we're going to have companies that are just video game and D-Web companies. Open, you can call it open finance, you can call it open world, whatever we're going to call it. But those two types of companies, those two types of technology companies are going to be the winners of the next 10 years. So that's my claim and hot take.
And why gaming? Because it's an ever expanding market, or
It's interesting. It's sort of the same reason why I think D-Web is, it skirts underneath regulatory scrutiny until it doesn't. So I think that, first off, if you look at the gaming market over the last 50 years, One of the things that solidified this for me was sort of if you watch High Score, this documentary on video games that's on Netflix, the watching the development of video games, it's very like watching the development of crypto in how it was, how it evolved. And I think that, I think, it's tough to argue that Fortnite is not, Epic Games, which owns Fortnite, is not going to be one of the biggest companies on the planet. Like, basically, in a 3D reality, they completely control the end 3D developer, right? It's Unity and Unreal. Like, those are the two. And it's hard to argue, in my mind, it's actually hard to argue that they're not going to be a $1 trillion company, because at some point, we are going to be living in the metaverse. We are like, these are things that are just going to happen. And so, and video games are this like cute thing that everyone does. It's gender doesn't matter. Like, basically, there's huge markets for it. It's hundreds of billions of dollar market. A couple of the biggest companies already do this. Tencent owns the top like 20 games, basically. And that's, in China, that's crazy. And so I believe that there's going to be this sort of you're going to have two identities, your real world identity and your video game identity, and then you'll also have a few identities in that world. And one of them will live on Epic, one of them will live on, but you'll always have this consistent like identity avatar. And I think games actually have more of your identity pinned than a lot of these other companies. Like, I think they, in some ways, Blizzard knows you better than like Facebook. And just based off of like how you act online, like, are you a, yeah, sorry, that this became more of a rant, but like, I believe that is what I believe. I believe that video games are undervalued social networks that everyone is on and no one's really thinking about.
Yeah, they're like higher fidelity social networks. They're like social networks for new generation. Like
Yeah,
there's no reason to go
and,
back to Facebook, right? For like new generation.
and I think Facebook sees it coming, and that's why they've made such a huge bet in virtual reality. Like, that, I commend them on at least they know that they missed the mobile platform. They know that they completely effed up there, and so they're going after crypto with Libra, and they do not want to miss the next platform. They want to at least have the experience, right? I think they're taking their very focused bets in industries. Plus, Oculus is a monopoly in VR. I'm a huge investor in VR, and right now, it's HTC, but they haven't released a consumer grade untethered headset yet. And like, Oculus did. And I don't know if you have a Quest, but it's an amazing product. It's early, but it's an amazing product.
Have you tried the Valve's new product?
I actually haven't. Sorry, that's the other one, but I think that one's tethered. I'm not positive on that, but I think it has a plug.
Yeah, I think it's tethered. Yeah, I kind of want to try at some point.
Oh, completely. No, so Half-Life Alyx is supposed to be the best game, period. Like, people are saying it's the best game, not VR game, which means that VR is transcending it. Back to sort of crypto land, the metaverse doesn't work without sort of blockchains, cryptocurrency, open web. Like, it doesn't. If you watch Ready Player One, and if you believe, we obviously can play video games as sort of God mode, first person shooters and like all that stuff, but living it, people are going to be able to actually earn income in a video game, earn, all that stuff. Like, they're going to be these micro countries. They're going to be countries that are video game centric. People will live 4 to 6 hours a day, and then there's going to be an argument. So this is the crazy stuff. We're going to get to crazy. Ready? There's going to be an argument that if I'm spending, let's say, 7 hours a day in a video game, I don't live in California. I live in that video game. So I should be paying taxes to the video game rather than paying taxes to California. And that will be a rational argument that is going to be had in about 15 years. And that's crazy. Like, the fact that like I'm going to be saying like, well, my mind is not here anymore and I'm meeting all these people everywhere else. So I don't know why I'm paying taxes here when the governance in there is way better. And so like we're going to be having this like separation of like tech and state. Ooh, coining that, separation of tech and state. Um, and the and that's a evolution that's going to happen, and it's going to be driven by cryptocurrency. It's going to be driven by like open finance, open governance, and like 3D animators, and technologists. Obviously, you know, tech in movies and tech in entertainment gets a bad rep. You know, because from my perspective, if and business people, they get a bad rap. Like business people are always the evil. Like in Russia, I always think about it's always the 55-year-old white business guy. Like he's the bad guy at the end of every single movie. You're like, oh, Rush Hour 1 and 2 and 3. It was the same. And then the like all these movies, they all have this thing. And tech and business people always get a bad rap in entertainment. But from my perspective, like really what technology is all about is driving like hope of better, like we're constantly just trying to say like, what if there was a better way? And we're battling those ideologies with building. And like that's the world I want to fight for, right? Like that's the and so I think that there's also this dichotomy of those two things. So um where it's like, and I think there's going to be emerging. I think actually tech and business people are getting a better rap. I think people have a firmer understanding of what it is. I think there just happened like in the last 50 years, it was just like movie people needed some, I don't know, the difference between like the business person in Jerry Maguire and the business person at the end of every like buddy comedy where it's the evil person, the head of the drug organization is like yeah, it's always funny. And then tech, like social networks, a good example. But AI, even like they always go evil. Like it has to happen. It's like, and then all you hear about is Elon Musk and like all these people saying like there's a moral responsibility for artificial intelligence to be good, and it's like, yeah, well that's only going to scare more people. Like I don't know, lots of stuff, lots of exciting stuff. I think we're ambassadors of like the future and hope and what it could be, and like I just want like I want tech to have the right representation because then that encourages more future great builders. That's that's why it bothers me in media. Is like I want anything that is halting people from building the future to I don't like those things. And if it's entertainment, media, whatever it is, like if that's stopping you, like don't let it stop you. Um because tech's good. Like I have never run into a situation where I haven't seen like I always think we're building awesome. It's always awesome. Like back to jetpack companies at this point. Like if you see someone fly, you throw money at them. That is my rule.
How jetpacks, are they fully functional at this point, or?
Yeah. Well, there's three problems with all jetpacks, right? There's the falling out of the sky problem, which everyone can sort of like fathom immediately. There's the noise problem. They're very loud. So VTOL engines, vertical takeoff and landing engines, are like they're jet engines, and they're hooked up onto a human, but it's a jet. It sounds like a jet. And then the third thing is battery life. But I love that they have three distinct problems. You can throw money and people at those three problems to figure out how to come up with good solutions. It's not, it's not crazy to think that in 10 years there's a lower cost, not low cost, but lower cost way to get from here to 10 minutes away, in the air. Someone's going to have to translate that problem, but it's, that's what entrepreneurs do. You want to know what my biggest fear is? My biggest fear is that our imaginations are shrinking. And that's actually, this pandemic has like made it harder to brainstorm, which makes it harder for velocity of ideas to move faster. And so I have this general fear that we aren't imagining far enough out anymore. We're imagining like sci-fi writers used to imagine essentially 60 years out, like really, really far out. Like that's hard to do. Like if you read Ender's Game, that was like 70 years ago or something. And like I I think it's even still early, but they did see the iPad coming. But they didn't. We haven't gotten to space and like sport in space. Um, like these people, they really thought through distant futures, and I don't see those as much anymore. Rational distant futures, like character distant futures. Um, so I have a fear that imagination is stunting, and so whenever I can sort of, if I believe that I can help influence, which is what, like if I can invest capital in something that could expand people's imaginations, that's sort of where I invest, right? Like that's where I want the world to go. I want people to be able to imagine more and farther and bigger. So that's really what I'm trying to do.
Why do you think imagination is changing?
Well, first off, all we're watching in movies are sequels. Like it's like there are no new brands, and maybe that's because we like the old stuff and we don't want anything different, and we're all comfortable in our worlds. Um, but like there's no like the number of new things. I mean, I knew the stories that have been in every Marvel movie because I've been collecting comic books my whole life, basically 10 years ago. Like but the and now we've mass distributed it. And hopefully they don't just keep recreating the same movies. Although I am starting to read Third Body Problem, and I'm reading this Mars book, and I do feel that these are pretty good sci-fi books for like what's the next stuff that's happening. So I hope our imaginations are expanding at an equivalent rate. It just feels that we're becoming complacent. Like it feels that with technology we're sort of trying to become complacent in some level. And so I think that there's still things that can push the boundaries of your imagination into the real world. And I think a lot of things in cryptocurrency do that. I remember the first argument I had with my grandfather about Bitcoin. I said, I invest in this Bitcoin company. We're actually our accelerator is going all in on Bitcoin. And he goes, don't do that. It's never going to work. In order for a currency to work, you need government, you need trust, you need these things. And I was like, well, couldn't there be another way? Like people, because if you're entrenched in the old system, you can't fathom the other way. And so I don't know. I love seeing that. I want to live wherever that debate is happening in any industry because that's the most fun. The most fun spot for me is always where it's like there's an incumbent world that everyone believes something, and then we're trying to figure out how to change their mind a little bit and then a lot of it. And and then it's like obvious. It's like, oh man, there was a press release about Burning Man, and they couldn't have it. And the press release cited virtual reality as a rational replacement for Burning Man. So it was just like a normal. They didn't criticize the technology. They didn't criticize the choice. They didn't criticize anything. So it just sounded like so naturally we used virtual reality to bring everyone together, and like we're up against a timeline to be able to give you a good experience. And I was like, you're rationally discussing VR as a replacement for your event? Like that's crazy to me. So I think there are these flippenings that happen where people's minds are like they get driven up to the cliff, and then there's one thing that happens that makes them think, oh, I believe that now. And like I want like we in crypto, we love pushing people over the edge there. But sometimes it just puts people's defenses up, and no one, I don't know.
That's awesome. That's a good way to think about it. And would you overall like want to be applying to Boost?
So it's a great question. I would say sectors have always changed, but the type of people we like don't. So all I want are people, founders, people who align with wanting to start a business, change the world, who align with that concept, um, who have the energy to do so and are committed to either themselves or their industry. And ideally, they have some expertise that they can claim, whether it be from their research or their it basically creating a track record of success is always a good thing, and it makes it easier to say yes. Doesn't mean that that's the only thing. but experience in your profession that will lead me to believe that you have the right network, the right skill sets to be able to lead a team into this new future. But really, we want commitment and energy of this this founder identity. And it doesn't, you don't need to have a product yet. We're more than happy to invest in, generally we go pre-product to $1 million in revenue is sort of, I would say, where we're super, super helpful. And we also are very, very helpful for heavy R&D projects. But because we believe that technology moats are the ones that investors are least willing to take the risk on. So we're most willing to take risk on that. And sometimes that's in crypto, sometimes that's in space. I mean, I remember, so Etherscan's a great example. They applied to Boost VC in Tribe 6, and we rejected them. And it was called BlockScan. And we said, hey, founder's name is Matt. He's a fantastic person. I said, hey, these are the 3 things of reason why we just can't accept you right now. I forget exactly what the reason, I could probably pull up the email. But these are the 3 things. 6 months later, he applies again. And he said, after our conversation, I tried this thing that you didn't work, the one that you suggested. But these other 2 things I worked on, and things are looking really, really well. We're now called Etherscan. We're the most dominant search engine on the blockchain. And I was like, well, he took feedback. He knew why some of the things didn't work that I suggested him work on. He's made incredible progress. And now I would love to invest in this founder. And he kept us updated along the way. So it's like, I want to build relationships with people. I want to work with people who are really, really trying to change things and build useful tools. That's a good example of people who are committed. Also, that it was 6 months later, 12 months later, and he was still committed to this one thing. If you've obsessively been thinking about and building something for 2 years, you deserve to have a good, fair shake at it, right? I want to be able to enable those people. That's what Boost VC is. I just said way too many words to represent that, but we look for people who have good energy and are committed, and they've been working on something.
Yeah, this is awesome. This is a really good description. Sounds good. And where do people find more about you online as well?
So you can follow me on Twitter. I've started to tweet again, and that's fun. Adam Draper, and then you can wait for our application to pop up for the next session of Boost VC, which would be up in about 3 weeks to a month. And it's going to launch, it'll go up on our website, boost.vc. And also feel free to email me, adam@boost.vc. I'm always happy to help founders who are sort of focused in a direction. Cite that you listen to this podcast, and I'm more than happy to sort of respond to your emails. So adam@boost.vc is my email address, and I'm pretty open about it. Actually, turns out even if you give it out, if you give out your email address, not that many people still reach out. Initiative is something that people just need.
Thank you for listening. You can find more episodes of this podcast at openwebcollective.com. If you're a founder looking for help with product, go-to-market, or fundraise, apply on the same exact website. It's openwebcollective.com. If you really like this episode, I would really appreciate if you give us a review on a platform of choice where you listen to podcasts to. And finally, if you're on Twitter, we are at OpenWebFounders. Again, the handle is at OpenWebFounders. I'll see you next week.